The Yuming Black Market, located at the junction where the Hengyu Sect, Zhengyang Sect, and Qingyun Sect territories converged, functioned both as a trading hub and a notorious outlet for stolen goods. Its reputation fostered constant unrest, drawing in villains and predators who had been infamous since ancient times. Yet, despite its chaos, the market remained attractive for cultivators, offering foreign treasures at prices far lower than those of official markets. Yi Chen asked Elder Zhou how much cheaper black iron and black steel would be at the Yuming Black Market compared to the pavilion's prices. Elder Zhou explained that goods sold there often came from questionable origins, with sellers eager to dispose of stolen materials quickly. Factoring in the price difference, he estimated the savings could reach 40 to 50,000 spirit stones. Yi Chen repeated the figure to himself, recognizing that such an amount was no small sum. He concluded that if he truly intended to buy black iron and black steel, he would likely need to venture into the Yuming Black Market. Elder Zhou, however, cautioned that the place was far from safe and that one could lose their life at any moment, urging Yi Chen to think carefully before making the trip. Yi Chen replied that he had no other choice, though he also questioned why the elder sold the materials at such steep prices in his pavilion. Elder Zhou coughed lightly before answering that 40 to 50,000 spirit stones could always be earned back over time. He stressed that acquiring the black iron and steel had not come easily, since he had invested significant effort to obtain them and therefore deserved to profit from their sale. Outwardly, Yi Chen smiled and conceded that the elder was right, though inwardly he considered the man to embody the craftiness typical of shopkeepers. Just then, Hua returned from the pavilion and called out to Yi Chen. Elder Zhou observed the weapon Hua had selected and identified it as a black iron staff. Yi Chen questioned Hua about his choice, noting the variety of available spirit weapons and asking why he had chosen that particular one. Of all weapons, the spear was the most difficult to master, yet the black iron staff, with no spearhead to aid its thrust, was even harder to practice. Elder Zhou suggested that the young boy exchange it for another weapon. Hua declined, saying he truly liked the black iron staff and would not change it. Yi Chen accepted his decision and asked the elder whether he possessed any profound arts for staff techniques. Elder Zhou explained that staff skills were not popular in their sect, so he had none to offer, and suggested they try the Wanbao Pavilion where Pang Dahai might possess such techniques. Later on, Hua reported that the Wanbao Pavilion also lacked staff techniques. Yi Chen reassured him not to worry and promised to find a way to obtain one for him. Around this time, nearby disciples were speaking among themselves, wondering if the rumors were true that Yi Chen intended to challenge Qi Hao of Renyang Peak. One disciple asked if this could be serious, while another confirmed it and added that Qi Hao had already reached the second stage of foundation establishment. Word of their discussion soon reached Qingyang, who declared that someone was looking down on his Renyang Peak and ordered Qi Hao to discipline him. Standing below, Qi Hao accepted with confidence and promised to obey his master. As he walked away, Su Xin and 3 other disciples announced they would accompany him. At the Fengyun stage, a voice remarked that while Yi Chen had previously defeated 2 peak disciples in succession, it was uncertain whether he could overcome Qi Hao this time. As Yi Chen approached the stage, other disciples continued discussing that Wei Yang and Zhao Long together could not compare to Qi Hao, pointing out that the Qi condensation stage and the foundation establishment stage were fundamentally different levels. Before Yi Chen could step onto the platform, Bear 2 suddenly stumbled into his path, looking battered. Yi Chen was surprised and inwardly guessed that Bear 2 must have been beaten by his father after returning home. Urgently, Bear 2 asked Yi Chen to tell him honestly how confident he was in defeating Qi Hao. Yi Chen replied that he was 100% confident. The moment he heard this, Bear 2 vanished in a flash after voicing his approval, leaving Yi Chen momentarily puzzled. Almost at once, Bear 2 reappeared at his betting table, loudly announcing odds of 10-1 for Qi Hao and 1-10 for Yi Chen. Waving his hands energetically, he called for wagers, encouraging disciples to stake big for bigger returns. As the crowd gathered, Bear 2 repeated the odds, stressing that those who bet on Chi Hao stood to win the most, while backing Yi Chen yielded only meager gains. Many disciples, certain of Chi Hao's victory, crowded the table and placed their stakes. Bear 2's expression brightened as the betting pool on Chi Hao filled with spirit coins, while he reminded everyone that once placed, all bets were final. Watching from a distance, Yi Chen felt irritated, wondering if everyone truly saw him as that weak. Yet a thought struck him. His annoyance gave way to a calculating smile, for he suddenly realized this might be the perfect chance for easy money, arriving just when he needed funds to purchase black iron and black steel. Just then, a shout announced Chi Hao's arrival, accompanied by the admiring reactions of girls as he and his group proceeded forward. Upon entering the stage, Chi Hao immediately questioned the origin of Yi Chen's courage to issue such a challenge. Yi Chen responded by advising against excessive arrogance. Su Xin voiced her characteristic criticism, condemning Yi Chen's perceived excessive killing intent and predicting his failure. Meanwhile, Bear 2 called out from his betting table, offering Chi Hao a final chance to place a wager before closing the bets. Chi Hao confirmed his participation by throwing a pouch of 10,000 spirit stones on his own victory. Observers expressed admiration for Chi Hao, marveling at his wealth, appearance, and courage, with one individual referring to him as Prince Charming. In contrast, Yi Chen spun a pouch on his finger while chuckling and acknowledging his comparative lack of wealth, stating he would wager only 100 spirit stones. A nearby voice dismissed him as a bumpkin, prompting Bear 2 to formally close the betting. As Yi Chen stretched, Chi Hao proposed a personal wager between them. Yi Chen declined, maintaining that he had no money to bet. Chi Hao responded by questioning whether Yi Chen was afraid and suggesting that begging might earn him mercy. Yi Chen calmly asserted his lack of fear, adding that defeating Chi Hao would naturally transfer all valuable possessions to him. Chi Hao dismissed this as boastful before launching an immediate attack. Yi Chen noted his opponent's exceptional speed and unfamiliar body technique. Yi Chen raised his sword to block Chi Hao's incoming palm strike, the impact driving him backward across the stage. Chi Hao snorted dismissively, declaring that Yi Chen could not withstand even a single blow. Without hesitation, he sprang forward with a palm strike, and Yi Chen lifted his sword to meet it. Chi Hao smiled to himself, thinking that Yi Chen was still alive, while Yi Chen, smiling in return with his sword raised, seemed to challenge whether Chi Hao was looking down on his true combat ability. Chi Hao's palm smashed into the floor where Yi Chen had just stood, but Yi Chen had already slipped aside. Still crouched from the landing, Chi Hao began to speak, only for his words to cut short as his figure suddenly blurred. In an instant, he lunged forward, completing his remark by declaring Yi Chen far too slow. Yi Chen's smile did not falter. If he was too slow, then he would simply move faster. With a sudden burst of speed, Yi Chen sidestepped sharply, slipping past Chi Hao's line of attack and catching him off guard. Without giving Chi Hao a chance to recover, he charged in with his sword, shouting fiercely. Chi Hao narrowly evaded the blade, channeling Chi into his palm as he dodged. Planting his foot with force, Yi Chen lifted his hand and unleashed the rushing thunder palm. Their palms collided, Chi rippling outward as Chi Hao gritted his teeth against the force while Yi Chen held his smile. The clash drove Chi Hao back several steps, and the watching disciples erupted in murmurs. They remarked that Chi Hao had been defeated head-on, reasoning that his earlier battle with Fei Juke had drained his chi, leaving no chance to recover, though they admitted that Yi Chen himself was far from ordinary. Chi Hao steadied himself, still smiling, though a trace of smugness lingered as he admitted to underestimating Yi Chen. Yi Chen's confident smile deepened as he warned that underestimation would only bring a miserable defeat. Chi Hao's expression darkened, and with deliberate precision he formed a hand seal, challenging Yi Chen to withstand the technique he was about to unleash. A beam of light shot out from above Chi Hao, accompanied by multiple streaks that formed concentric circles as he executed his sword monsoon technique, creating swords of light that obeyed his command. Gripping his own sword with a confident smile, Yi Chen raised his blade and shouted his intent to break the technique, intensifying his force to meet the whirling lights. Chi Hao responded with a dismissive sound. While still engaged with the light swords, Yi Chen observed Chi Hao forming another hand gesture. Chi Hao then unleashed his Earth Dragon technique, causing the floor to shift and rise vertically. A rock monster resembling an onyx emerged from the ground, prompting the watching disciples to remark on the mysterious secret technique and note that Yi Chen was now trapped between the sword monsoon ahead and the Earth Dragon behind. Infusing his hand with chi, Yi Chen glanced at the towering rock monster and declared that he did not care whether it was a dragon or a worm. He punched it while shouting for it to stay down, instantly crushing the creature. Gasps rippled through the disciples, who admitted they had underestimated his strength. Bear Tu, in particular, exclaimed that he had never imagined Yi Chen possessed such domineering power. Chi Hao faltered for a moment, caught off guard, before forcing another hand gesture and declaring that Yi Chen should withstand yet another attack. Yi Chen charged forward, questioning whether Chi Hao really believed he would be given another chance. In an instant, Yi Chen appeared before Chi Hao with his sword drawn, causing Chi Hao to acknowledge Yi Chen's terrifying speed. As Yi Chen's foot struck the ground, the floor beneath them crushed under the impact. Mid-charge, Yi Chen shifted his stance and executed the rushing thunder palm technique. Chi Hao realized Yi Chen had been concealing his true strength, his expression shifting to fear as he extended his palm to meet the attack. The impact sent Chi Hao backward with a grunt of pain, his face reflecting disbelief at Yi Chen's power. Without pause, Yi Chen rushed toward him again, unleashing another rushing thunder palm. Chi Hao coughed blood while blocking the strike with a chi barrier, having activated his profound light shield armor. Yi Chen maintained his palm technique, commanding the shield to break before him, and successfully shattered Chi Hao's defense. As Chi Hao grew increasingly nervous, questioning what kind of opponent Yi Chen truly was, Yi Chen advanced with a chi-infused palm toward Chi Hao's attempt to create another barrier, declaring his intent to break through once more. The lightning palm sent Chi Hao reeling backward as Yi Chen vowed to shatter the shield completely. Yi Chen lunged again, warning Chi Hao to pray extensively should they meet again. His attack grazed Chi Hao before Yi Chen delivered a sharp slap, questioning Chi Hao's preference for sneak attacks. With his expression radiating fury, Yi Chen punched Chi Hao while demanding to see his final struggles again, mocking his previous speed. The watching disciples exchanged startled remarks, noting how the basic fighting techniques transformed into something extraordinary in Yi Chen's hands. One observed that Yi Chen appeared less human and more like a fierce beast, while Bear Tu clicked his tongue repeatedly in admiration of Yi Chen's ferocity. Meanwhile, Chi Hao stood battered, his breathing ragged. Su Xin and the other Renyang disciples were flabbergasted, remarking that he had been thoroughly beaten by someone still in the chi condensation stage. They emphasized his disheveled state, insisting that as a foundation establishment cultivator, his strength should have far surpassed Yi Chen's. Unable to accept it, Su Xin accused Yi Chen of resorting to demon arts. His companions quickly echoed the charge, denouncing Yi Chen as a disgrace for employing such forbidden techniques. Their cries spread, and soon the other disciples joined in, shouting that Yi Chen was unworthy to face Chi Hao and proclaiming that their Hengyu sect would never tolerate demon arts. The uproar escalated as they began hurling objects at him, all the while cursing him as a villain and demanding his removal. Voices rose in unison, calling for him to be dragged to the disciplinary hall for harsh punishment, condemning him as evil, despicable, and shameless. Through it all, Yi Chen watched in silence while their accusations grew louder. They jeered at him to curse again, claiming that though he might silence them for a moment, he could not silence everyone present. Their shouts continued relentlessly, declaring that he had forsaken the righteous path for evil ways and insisting he should be ashamed. Without warning, a surge of qi struck Yi Chen in the chest as Chi Hao shouted for his death. Yi Chen recognized it as yet another despicable sneak attack, recalling how Chi Hao had ambushed him before in the back mountain while he was gathering spirit grass. This time, Chi Hao's desperation was plain, Enraged, he hurled a barrage of chi strikes while laughing maniacally. Watching from below, Bear 2 slammed the stage in frustration, denouncing the act as shameless. Blow after blow landed on Yi Chen as the Renyang disciples cheered for Chi Hao to finish him. Su Xin let out a long breath, her face alight with arrogant glee as she assured herself that Chi Hao could not possibly lose. Bear 2 pointed at Chi Hao in fury, condemning him for taking advantage through vile sneak attacks and questioning whether any righteousness remained in his actions. Driven back step by step, Yi Chen found himself forced to the very edge of the stage. Chi Hao gathered chi into the form of a sword and again shouted for Yi Chen to go to hell, driving the blade into his shoulder. Yet Yi Chen seized the glowing weapon with his bare hand, anchoring himself to the stage while chi surged into his free palm. He then smashed his fist into Chi Hao's face, declaring that the old grudge would end that day. With the strike delivered, he tore the blade from his shoulder as his own chi flared, rising in the form of a lion behind him. His challenge resounded as he dared Chi Hao to fight. Yi Chen followed with a furious barrage of punches, each strike hammered home with a shout. The disciples erupted in protest, condemning Yi Chen as a user of demon arts and demanding his removal, though their outcry was driven less by loyalty to Chi Hao than by fear of losing the spirit stones they had all wagered on him. Yi Chen unleashed a flurry of punches against Chi Hao's face, each blow landing with relentless force. From the sidelines, Bear 2 waved a flag with fervor, shouting encouragement. Nearby, one of Su Xin's fellow disciples whispered anxiously about what they should do next, and Su Xin, who had once worn a look of arrogant glee, now stood silent, weighed down by the same worry. The barrage ended as Yi Chen drove a final punch into Chi Hao that sent him crashing hard to the ground. Chi Hao lay sprawled, battered and gasping, Yi Chen's name slipping from his lips. Forcing himself upright, he declared that Yi Chen could not defeat him after all. Yi Chen frowned in confusion, only then noticing the talisman affixed to his arm. A startled voice rang out in recognition of a heavenly spirit talisman, and others quickly echoed it, marveling that Chi Hao possessed such a treasure. They proclaimed Yi Chen's doom, certain that with his true chi sealed, their wagers would be safe. The Renyang disciples took heart, declaring that their senior had planned everything and that there was no longer any need to fear the remaining matches. Su Xin let out a long breath of relief, while Bear 2 roared in outrage, condemning Chi Hao for resorting to a heavenly spirit talisman against a mere chi condensation opponent. Chi Hao only answered with mocking laughter. Yi Chen stood tense, realizing the gravity of the situation. With his divine sea bound, his true chi and even the true fire were sealed away. Though his body remained strong and his combat ability sharp, without chi there was no path to victory. Chi Hao gripped his chi sword, vowing to make Yi Chen suffer a fate worse than death. Yi Chen retorted that the outcome of life and death had yet to be decided. The watching disciples mocked his defiance, pointing out that with his true chi sealed, his defeat was certain. They dismissed his efforts as nothing more than a futile struggle. Chi Hao swung his sword, demanding to see how long Yi Chen could endure, but Yi Chen dodged the strike. Blow after blow followed, yet each slash was narrowly evaded until Yi Chen reached his Heaven's Breaker sword. Seizing it, he raised the weapon to block Chi Hao's next attack. Blood trickled from his mouth as he gritted his teeth, forcing himself to hold against the crushing force. Chi Hao delivered a heavier strike and roared for Yi Chen to die, yet the block held firm. Suddenly, the blade pierced into Yi Chen's chest, but before it could drive deeper, he clutched the edge with his bare hand and shouted as he prepared to punch. Chi Hao slashed again while catching the punch with his palm, sneering that the attack was too weak. The force of his chi sent Yi Chen staggering backward. Charging forward with a sadistic smile, Chi Hao taunted that Yi Chen still had not died. His expression then froze in shock as chi chains erupted from his hand, leaving him bewildered at how such a thing was possible. The disciples stared in astonishment, realizing Yi Chen also possessed a heavenly spirit talisman. They marveled at the rarity of such treasures and wondered how he had obtained one, declaring Chi Hao's defeat inevitable now that he too was bound by its power. Bear 2 grinned broadly, cheering Yi Chen's actions, while Su Xin stood stunned, unable to fathom where Yi Chen had acquired the talisman. Chi Hao stared at his hand, screaming in disbelief. Yi Chen reminded him of his earlier words, insisting that the outcome of their confrontation was far from decided. Chi Hao demanded to know how he could possess a heavenly spirit talisman, but Yi Chen dismissed its importance, stating that with both of their true chi sealed, the fight was now even and the real battle was about to begin. Chi Hao unconsciously stepped back as Yi Chen charged forward. Raising his arms to block, he heard Yi Chen question whether he truly believed such a defense could succeed. A heavy blow struck his face with a cry of pain, and Chi Hao, long reliant on true chi while neglecting his basic skills, now found himself powerless against Yi Chen's sheer strength and technique. At that moment, a reckless disciple rushed onto the stage and lunged from behind. Yi Chen reacted swiftly, driving a kick into the intruder's abdomen before he could land a strike. He questioned whether someone at the fourth stage of chi condensation was even worthy to stand against him. The surrounding disciples murmured in awe, acknowledging that even without true chi, his strength remained formidable. Not stopping there, Yi Chen gripped the foot of the foolish disciple, whose ugly face twisted in shock as Yi Chen slammed him to the floor with a resounding crash, his body embedding into the ground as smoke slowly cleared from the impact. More disciples stormed onto the Feng Yun stage, declaring that since Yi Chen's true chi was sealed, they would fight him together. Beartu angrily drew his club, intending to assist Yi Chen, but halted as he watched the scene unfold. Yi Chen struck one disciple with a crushing punch, seized another by the hand, and swung him forcefully into the others, sending bodies tumbling. Beartu exclaimed in admiration at Yi Chen's strength, while the watching crowd stared in disbelief, murmuring about his ferocity. Another imprudent disciple lunged at Yi Chen from behind, but having endured enough, Yi Chen shouted a warning about courting death before driving a powerful kick into the man's abdomen. The disciple's eyes bulged in horror as he realized his meridian had been crippled by the blow. The sight stirred Su Xin, who immediately confronted Yi Chen, demanding whether he didn't fear punishment from the disciplinary hall for injuring fellow disciples. Yi Chen answered coolly, reminding her of the Sect's rules. In Feng Yun stage duels, no third person was permitted to intervene except the combatants themselves. He declared that even if he destroyed such interlopers on the spot, the disciplinary hall would have no authority to punish him, and he turned the blame back on the Renyang disciples for being the first to break the rules. At that moment, Chi Hao forced himself to his feet, vowing death upon Yi Chen, only to be struck down again by a ringing slap that sent him flying across the stage. Su Xin, watching the clash unfold, drew her sword and prepared to confront Yi Chen. Yet before she could act, Bear Two stepped in behind her, bow already drawn, an arrow aimed at her back. He called her by name, Su Xin Yu, and warned her to remain obedient, declaring that his wind-chasing arrow would not discriminate if she dared resist. The threat made her turn nervously, glancing behind at the danger locked on her. Bear Two held his stance, remarking that he preferred not to aim at anyone, yet if forced to act, she should not blame him for cruelty. At the same time, Yi Chen lifted a pouch in his hand and declared that he would show no further restraint. As he plundered Chi Hao's belongings, he announced that what once belonged to others was now his, and what was already his remained his own. News of the battle on the Feng Yun stage spread swiftly through the outer sect. A chi condensation disciple who had defeated challengers from all three main peaks in a single month, including one at the Foundation establishment stage, was destined to be remembered as a legend for years to come. At Tianyang Peak, Zhang Lao could only lament, regretting how blind he had been to Yi Chen's potential as a genius disciple. Over at Dayang Peak, Zhehang scoffed that Qingyang's Renyang Peak had fared worse than their own. Meanwhile, Renyang Peak was filled with furious shouts of "Kill! Kill!" Chi Hao lay on a stretcher, swathed head to toe in bandages, vowing through clenched teeth that he would kill Yi Chen, only to be silenced by an unseen voice. Qingyang's disappointment weighed heavily as he berated his disciples, declaring they could not even overcome someone at the chi condensation stage, and that his years of teaching them had been wasted. Su Xin attempted to defend them, insisting Yi Chen was simply too sinister, but Qing Yang cut her off, ordering silence. He commanded his disciples to remain at the peak for the next month, warning them not to bring further disgrace with the outer sect tournament fast approaching.